First of all, tell us, how did the two of you meet?
Oh, this is a great history. First of all, ni hao, ni hao, ni hao, ni hao. So, we met at Duke University, and I think I was an undergraduate working in the lab. What year were you a fellow with Richard?
I was a fellow with Richard, 81, 82.
Okay, so 81, 82. So I came in 82 as an intern to Duke. So would that have been the time?
Yeah.
Or was it before? You never visited Duke and Goldner before 81, 82?
No.
So I think I met...
I think it's 82, 83.
No, that's exactly right. Okay, so...
Yeah.
And I know the tape's rolling. See, we're both old, but we're still active. It had to be 82, 83 that Dr. Stavanovich was a fellow with J. Leonard Goldner and with Jim Urbanik. Urbanik was the founding member of the ASRM, our teacher, our father figure, as was Leonard Goldner, who was the only orthopedic surgeon to be president of the Hand Society, American Society for Surgery of the Hand, and the American Foot and Ankle Society. Nevertheless, I was an intern. We don't call them interns anymore, but in those days, we worked every other night on call. There was no duty hour restriction. And in that year, and I'm not going to speak for Milan, he and Richard Goldner, who was Leonard Goldner's son, an incredible person, incredible hand surgeon, they did with Jim Urbanik probably over 150 replants in 1 year. So I'm going to stop there, but I remember the integrity of Milan Stavanovich, his work ethic, his kindness, his pursuit of excellence, and it's a little emotional with him next to me. You know, when we call each other on the phone, we speak very often. Every time I do a functional gracilis at the Shrine, I call him Milan. I'm doing pediatric free flap. A little emotional for me. I call him older brother, and I'm his younger brother.
Yeah, he came and I said, what do you want here in the lab? I want to learn microsurgery. I said, you know, you cannot only come 10 minutes and I sacrifice the rats. You have to stay as much as you need. He said, older brother, I'll do whatever you guys say here. And that's how it was started, you know. Nobody worked in his class, and no person that I saw in my life who achieved more than he did. And I think Duke University must be proud to have somebody giant like Scott, who did so much for reputation of the Duke. Microsurgery, hand surgery, and so on.
But see, humility, and we learn this from our teachers, humility is the greatest asset of a leader. And Milan Stavanovich is known around the world. And we both reflect on our teachers. You know, the idea of standing on the shoulders of giants. His legacy and history in Yugoslavia, Milan's personal history, very few people know about. How he got to the country, how he came to us, and then Joe Boys in Los Angeles, and then you know, we hear about people like Marco Godina, but Milan Stavanovich knew him and is the modern Marco of our time. I've learned, and the world has learned, so much from him. And it's interesting, you know, when you get to be the president of the American Society for Surgery of the Hand, you can pick the presidential lecture, be anybody in the world. It took me a nanosecond to select Milan Stavanovich, who gave an unbelievable talk. And, you know, part of what we believe in and what we know at our age and how we were taught is to remember the history. And where did we start, and how did we get here? And where do we project in the future? Dr. Sabiston, Dave Sabiston, who was a student of Alfred Blalock, you know, the Blalock-Talzig shunt in heart surgery, always emphasized in conference, what's the history? What's the history? And I think we grew up with the history. Okay, 82 till now is 43 years. When I was a Duke undergraduate, and Milan was probably in Yugoslavia, in 1974, 73, 74, I saw Urbanic do the first replant. That's all there was. Here we are 51 years later. So I'm going to stop, and Milan has reflections, I'm sure, about history.
Well, famous William Ward, American educator, said, the bad teacher say, the good teacher explain, the excellent teacher demonstrate, but the superior teacher inspire you. And I think both of us, we had Jim Urbaniak, who inspired us from the time we met him to the today date. And I think being the, inspiring teacher is very, very noble, profession.
Which was your first WSRM or ISRM meeting that you attended?
It was much different than today. I was a fellow at Duke, and the meeting was in New York, in Hilton Hotel, I think.
Barry Strauss.
With Barry Strauss. Barry Strauss was the second president, first president of the American Microsurgery Society. Was only one conference room with four corners having, projections.
With those things called slides.
And the people jump in one corner and say, this is the best slide, the best case that I think. And after that, another one, there was no schedule, another one from another corner will say, no, I think this is what you have to do. Another guy, you bring so many different cases to show. And, I was amazed what people that time were doing.
My first experience with microsurgery conference was literally a year later in '83. And if I'm not mistaken, the Micro Society used to meet with the Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons because Jim Steichen and Jim Urbaniak were the founding members, and Harold Kleinert, I think, was involved, but Urbaniak might have been or Joe Coots, that's what it was. Joe Coots was the president, and he had Bob Acklin speak, my teacher, and I remember Acklin's talk, and he talked about his family and sacrifice and the things. But I remember being in that auditorium like Milan, and we say we stand on the shoulders of giants, and it is true. And I would say that what's changed over 42 years, maybe it's because I've gotten older, both Milan and I have had many fellows and students, is I didn't feel that the senior people in those days were as approachable as the senior people today. I mean, at this wonderful WSRM, these young people come up and they see Milan and they ask him questions, and they see me, and it's inspiring for us. But our teachers like Urbaniak or Goldner or Jim Urbaniak would always have time for the most junior person or a student. Other people would not, and I won't say who they were, but this feeling of shared community in what we do, what we're passionate about, is really very inspiring. I mean, I'm so energized every time I come to a microsurgery meeting, and this one, we have what now, over 2,100 people here? 2,000. I think my Mumbai meeting was like 800, right, or 900. So look, in 10 years, we're doubling. But who is it? We're sort of the fossils in the room. We're still doing microsurgery because he calls me and tells me about his cases at county, and I call him, tell him. But the young people and the intermediate term folks who've been practicing come with just such amazing advancements and things, and that's the story of reconstructive microsurgery.
How do you think WSRM has changed over the last 2 decades?
Oh, tremendously. First, many new procedures are introduced, with very successful results. And what is important, we have an army that can change the world opinion about microsurgery. We have so many young, talented residents, fellows, and young microsurgeons who graduated. That's a really, pleasure to see what's going on in the world with the development and treatment of untreatable diseases before, problems with cancer and, trauma injuries. The patient never had a chance, except amputation. And I think everything will change in the better way.
Well, as I said before, just to see the growth and the interest of young people, this was our North Star, quote, how do we get young people involved in this? Of interest, to be very direct, one of the things that I think, at least in North America or the United States, resurrected or saved reconstructive microsurgery in the broad term is free breast reconstruction. Because we've written papers about this in the 2007, I think I wrote a paper on the declining interest. Remember, the microsurgical reconstructive ladder, I think you even wrote a paper with me on this, there was declining interest in replantation. Remember, that's all we had is revascularization, replantation. And then, with Ian Taylor, one of my favorite people and my teacher, my dear friend and mentor, Ian in 74 did the first free flap. That's 51 years ago. And we just did a little paper with him in the New Zealand Journal, I think, commemorating that. That changed everything. And then there was a serendipity, as you know, of many different free flaps. But let's come back to center. Just like people lost interest in trauma hand surgery, which I still do and many around the world do, it was, okay, free flap, producible, regular anatomy. So there was a huge resurgence, I think, in that. And then, things like extremity reconstruction or complex trauma reconstruction or microsurgery at inconvenient times, that again tends to fall off. So now we have this entire array of elective microsurgery. Beacons of excellence around the world, Chang Gung, MD Anderson, Memorial Sloan Kettering, Dr. Matros, our historian, is a consummate expert in head and neck reconstruction. The expansion of elective microsurgery has been incredible. And I think one of our powers, let me say this, not one of our powers, but one of our deficits as a reconstructive microsurgery community. We come, we embrace one another, we share so we all grow, but we're not talking to the right people. I've said this several times. The endocrinologists and the vascular surgeons know that instead of an amputation for a diabetic foot, we can revascularize and do a free flap. Look at the cases that Milan has shown, case after case. The guy sitting next to me, when he shows the pre-op, and you've had these in Singapore and I've had these, or even taking head and neck cancer, cases of Matros, you show the pre-op picture. You show that to uninformed head and neck surgeons. You show that to trauma surgeons, mangled extremity. Oh, amputate that. There's no way we can fix that. But we can. And I come back to Milan and the amazing work he does with basic principles that have been around a long time. But we are not getting out the message globally. We know about unmet need in places like Africa. We've heard some marvelous talks. There are people from Kenya here at the meeting who were marvelous trying to advance. But let me just come back again to Milan. Mutilating injury, bony destruction, nerve, no vessels. It's not a major limb replant, but then to take that patient and create a functional extremity. But we've been able to do that for 30 years. When I went to Japan in 1977, Takashi Kubo, Kenya Tsuge, and Yoshi Ikuta. Tsuge and Ikuta were my first teachers after Jim Urbanica. I went there after university before medical school. They published on Volkmann's ischemia, Tsuge did, in 76. That's 50 years ago that it's been in existence, but how few people do it around the world. That's my message. That's a long, and then you take somebody like Milan, who has mastered this, every nuance, even the even the expansion of the skin territory of the gracilis, because the way he taught me to harvest it, and we've both written on this knowledge has to be disseminated, not only technically, but what we as a microsurgical community can do. And I think, you know, there was resistance, you know this, to breast reconstruction for a long time. Certain countries, one of my plastic surgery residents who trained at Memorial with Evan, Demetrius Masterakis, an incredible surgeon, general surgery trained in the United States, Duke plastic surgery trained, felt he needed another year, so he went to Memorial for a year. Went back to Athens and they told him this microsurgery stuff, it's dangerous. It's going to kill people. And, you know, I'm not sure what the status of microsurgery is in Greece. Taki Soukakis is one of our best friends who's an orthopedic hand surgeon, and he and his colleagues have done great things. But can you imagine somebody does all that investment in training and he goes to a place where they're dismissed? So I don't know what the status is now, but I think we have a responsibility going forward to talk to the right people, to disseminate our knowledge, to make microsurgery for certain conditions standard of care, an obligation to teach underserved areas or provide microsurgeon understand by teaching the people there, right? You know, give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime.
What do you think is the most important contribution or innovation that our specialty has made?
First, replantation. Second, reconstruction. So many of the medical problems that people have with the tumors and the palsy and so on are now very well treated with microsurgical technique.
Who are your personal legends or giants in plastic surgery, and why?
I look to Jim Urbaniak, who, in my opinion, was my best teacher all these years. I have great teachers. You know, I was lucky to train Dr. Boyce office, and Dr. Boyce wrote that famous book on the shoulder of the giants. And he retired when I came there, but he gave every Wednesday conference for the fellows. And it was amazing, you know, to listen that giant. But Jim Urbaniak and Dr. Gollner were the amazing teachers, you know. The reason why Duke is so, you know, good, because he had a great Germans there. Dr. Gollner, Jim Urbaniak, you know, were amazing. So I was lucky in my life having absolutely the best teachers in the world.
Well, relatively brief list, but one of my greatest teachers and dear friend is sitting next to me, Milan Stevanovic, who's taught me about life and the passion for microsurgery and never give up. You know, I looked at his slide. He usually finishes his talks with never give up, and it's the picture of a bird eating a frog. And I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at it for 20 years. And I figured, what's so unique about that? And then probably a year ago, I looked at it, and the frog's hands are around the bird's neck, like let go of me, so never give up. But on a serious note, other than Milan, I'd agree, you know, Leonard Gollner and Jim Urbaniak, my teachers in Louisville, Harold Kleinert, Joe Coots, I have to mention Louis Schecker, Suman Sai, were unbelievable influences. The late Warren Breidenbach, who got me interested in transplantation. Fuchan Wei, certainly, and Hung Chi Chen in Taiwan, and Sam Nordoff. And then people around the world who had influence on me, you know, Elaine Muscalet from Paris, Reinhold Gantz in Switzerland, and you know, these are the people that have really inspired me a lot. And I want to also mention somebody very, very important that I would hope would be memorialized forever because of the giver he was. And that's our friend Randy Sherman, who was such a incredible influence on how to build microsurgery, how to collaborate, all the things we talk about, how to recognize young talent and promote others, never promoting himself, and he worked with Milan for 30 plus years, and I've known him, and we lost somebody who's irretrievable in that regard. My friend Joe Upton, who again is older than I am, but provided inspiration on how to think about things. The late Bill Shaw had an influence on me, who I knew well. So, again, that's a long list, but we were together with Fuchan and Hung Chi and Sam Nordoff in Taipei, as you remember. We were roommates, and that was a very formative time, I'm sure, for both of us. And it comes down also, I think our specialty comes down to work ethic. It's not for everyone. If you want to work 9 to 5, life of a microsurgeon is not a good life for you. But, my father said, and we've seen this on some slides in the conference, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So I've never worked a day in my life.
If I can add one thing, I was so lucky to have the best colleagues to work with me, and one of them was Randy Sherman. He and I were the best friends there. We never had a problem. He was a plastic, I was orthopedic. We lived like brothers, and it was one of the biggest loss that microsurgery, suffered after his unfortunate death. So that's amazing. And I can tell you, when I went to the first meeting of microsurgery, the person that impressed me with his presentation was Joe Upton. So I said, my God, if I ever have an injury like this, I have to find this guy. So that's how I went to
Yeah, we both
find,
love Joe.
Yeah,
Joe's
yeah.
a special person.
Yeah.
What is your favorite operation?
As a free functional muscle transfer for upper extremity, flexion of the elbow, extension of the finger, and flexion of the finger.
Sure.
And when I do that emergently, that's probably the best results. So,
I like a bunch of different things. Functional muscle, yes, but I'd have to say that the osteocutaneous fibula and different applications of actually even categorically vascularized bone flap. I mean, fibula is fibula, but its versatility, and I've done mandibles, and I've done spines, and I've done extremities, and I've done, all sorts of things with fibula. But now my new darling, I divorced the fibula but remarried the medial femoral condyle, and the chimeric MFC for foot and ankle and hand and so forth. So I think now, because it's sort of come online, the variations of MFC and medial trochlear flap and everything it energizes me.
Is there any operation that you do not perform today anymore?
not really. I probably don't see the same patients as much as, before. But, I love to do everything that I can, in my capacity. And I especially like when my fellows are well trained, and I know they will be presented very well our department. So that's the biggest pride that you have.
Yeah, actually, in early days, and this goes back, 12, almost 47 years, when I started plastic surgery. And that is, we used to do a lot of myocutaneous rectus for extremities, or the rectus abdominis flap. And then Foad Nahai, who worked with the late George Cerny in Atlanta for the Cerny classification of osteomyelitis, came and he said, I think that taking the rectus is raping the abdomen. He made me feel bad about using the rectus, but that was in the days before perforator flaps. And so I sort of gave up the rectus abdominis myocutaneous flap. Would use it obviously for APRs and pelvis, and on rare occasion. But I've gone, as Larry Gottlieb says, back to the back for free scapular flap, the ALT, obviously, but I don't use the rectus anymore. And I'll also tell you that I did an N of one case of dorsalis pedis flap as a chief resident, and I'll never do it again. I know Evan sometimes uses that for intraoral and so forth, perhaps, but the donor morbidity is too high, so an N of 1. So I don't do that. No, everything else, and you know, over time, you know, you get your armamentarium in terms of what it comes to you. I do think, and I think Milan can attest to this, and the late Burrish Strauss talked about this, and actually Randy Sherman talked about this, that, you know, you need 1 or 2 bone flaps, 1 or 2 or 3, you've talked about the skin flaps, you know, functional gracilis, you know. We both love doing toe transfer, and that's not an operation that comes along too often. But, you know, your armamentarium doesn't have to be that broad. Burrish Strauss talked about this. Take 1 flap and make it 20 different flaps. That is the fun of having a wide array in microsurgery, in my opinion.
What has been the greatest joy of your career?
I'll enjoy, you know, seeing my patients well recover after the treatment. That's the biggest joy. So when I go to the room and say, how you are doing, doctor, I said, depend how you are doing. If you are doing great, I'm doing much better. So, yeah, they say, I'm doing great. And see somebody, you know, I always say, you know, long time follow-up will give you misery or give you joy. So I like to see long-term follow-up of our patients. So many times you are surprised, you think the results is bad, but, you know, fortunately it's very good. So.
Well, there are 2 things. It's funny, Milan reminds me of my Monday clinics. You know, I'll go see patients, and the fellows or residents go into the room and come out and say, this is Mrs. Jones, you know, you did, and I'd say, how's she doing before I go in? Just to have a little precursor to prepare myself. And I always have an anxious moment like, oh, she's doing great. And I know the physician, oh, Dr. Levin, that flap dehisced, it's not so good. So we have triumphs and we all have failures. Yes, the greatest joy, being part of the continuum of microsurgery. I think both of us over 40 or 50, you know, me personally seeing it for 52 years now, 51, 52 years since I was a college student, seeing the evolution of microsurgery. So that's a great joy. And I have perspective on where I think we're going. Yes, the patients. I think the field of being privileged to be involved in allotransplantation and really transforming the lives of the 5 bilateral transplants that we've done. Seeing how we can create a team to do this. No one person is an island or stands alone. But I would have to say, my greatest joy, all those things are fine. My greatest joy has been seeing special trainees, those that I've trained, that have gone out and far gone beyond my capabilities. That's the mark, I think, of a great teacher, to see your students go beyond you. And that I can look right across at you and tell you how proud I am of you. Others around the world, fellows I've trained, that in their own right have gone on to become great leaders and great surgeons and hard workers in their communities around the world. That to me is, if I close my eyes tomorrow, it's those people that have maybe in a small part been influenced on what I've shown them, and they've taken things to the next level. That's the accomplishment. You know, what we pass on, and you know, hopefully that continues.
So if I can add,
Yeah, sure.
you know, there is no person that I saw in my life who worked so hard as Scott. No person in my life that I saw achieved as much as he did. It's probably 4 generations, Duke, nobody achieved even 50% of what he did. And, you know, no general can win the war without soldiers. He has so many soldiers that you cannot believe, the biggest army. And
He means I need a lot of help.
no, that means that you are so strong.
Thank you.
As to how hard he works.
Yes.
Thanks.
He's amazing. He educated so many people, and I say, oh, I heard that you know Dr. Scott Levine. I said, yes, I do. You know, you cannot believe how much he helped me, you know, all this, and just amazing.
And lastly, what would you have become if you were not a plastic surgeon?
Oh, I think I'd be cardiac surgeon. I was just in the end of my high school. Christian Barnard did the first heart transplant, Grote Schuur, in Cape Town, you know, South Africa. And I went to South Africa for 6 months. I went for 6 weeks and stayed 6 months as a missionary. Did more surgery there for 6 months than I did, you know, before a year. So it's an amazing country. So I said, maybe I'm going to medicine. I would like to be a cardiac surgeon. But that changed later on, you know.
It's very interesting. After my second year of general surgery, Dr. Sabiston asked if I wanted to switch and go into cardiac surgery. And cardiac surgery, you remember, was so strong at Duke. It was almost like hard to turn him down and not do that. I would say, though, that, and I think Urbanik got this also, you know, when he started microvascular surgery, there is an element, and you know this from your training, Milan just mentioned it, and Evan trained as a general surgeon. You know, they are, it's life and death surgery. It's very demanding. It's very technically oriented. Great rewards, but great complications in the patients. And I remember being in the unit as an intern and a junior resident managing all these sick patients. It taught me so much, not only about surgical technique and vascular surgery. You know, we ripped all the vein. We took all the vein. We'd work all night, up all night working up patients, and there was no 80-hour work week. So what we did after we were up all night, every other day we go to the OR, and our job on cardiac as the intern and the junior resident is to take vein. There was no endoscopic vein harvest for years. So we harvested all the vein. That was your job. And you learned a lot of surgery, just working around vessels and so forth. So I think I would have selected cardiac surgery.